He's a fire captain. During his career, he's faced all kinds of trauma, all kinds of fires, all kinds of traffic accident scenes. He's here to talk about two particularly disturbing and tragic incidents that had a profound effect on him and other firefighters, how trauma has shaped his life, and what he does about it today. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is brought to you in part by Breakfast with Champions, holding rooms daily in the Clubhouse drop-in social audio chat app. Download the app today. It is free. And join us in Breakfast with Champions, where everyone gets to see the table. Be heard. Find new friends from all over the globe. That's the Breakfast with Champions rooms in the Clubhouse drop-in social audio app. Get more details. Download the app today for free and get more details at thebwcinfo.com. Contact us from the great state of Arizona, the hot state of Arizona. We have Josh Grandinetti on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Josh is a fire captain, a career firefighter, and in an agency in Arizona, and he's here to talk about some of the things. You know, firefighters, they see a lot of stuff. They see and they experience a lot of trauma, a term that's thrown around a lot, and we don't really appreciate what it does to people. He's here to talk about two incidents during his career that had a profound impact on him and other firefighters. And by the way, he is one of the movers and shakers for Foundation Fortified. They're online at foundationfortified.org. Josh, thanks for your service. Number one, thanks for telling your story in the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Both very much appreciated.
No, thank you for having this program so some of us can come on and just be heard. I really appreciate the time.
A long time ago, and I want people to understand this, in police work and fire departments, the rank and file are not allowed to talk to the media. And it's not, it's a First Amendment thing, yeah, but it's really about the public information officers. It's about controlling information. We don't want bad information getting out there. We don't want information that's going to ruin cases. And we certainly don't want firefighters doing death notifications on television. That's what the public information officers are for. Having said that, right. I recognized a long time ago there's no platform for us to tell our stories, and people get a very one-sided story about what firefighters and police do throughout the United States, and we wonder why the news media fuels this stuff. I know why they do it, but we wonder why they attack us all the time. That's the reason why.
Right. Unfortunately, we're just getting to the point in society where it just seems like, anybody's willing to hear whoever the bad guy is, and it just seems to be the most popular thing these days is anybody who's out there trying to improve the situation is inherently just a bad guy to the media.
I don't know why, and for some reason it's become. Look, I say there's an old saying that the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing the world that he didn't exist. And I said, until the news media told you that MS-13, Hells Angels, 1% motorcycle gangs were less of a threat than police and firefighters. That's the biggest lie in the world.
It's astonishing. It's astonishing.
And they paint, I see news reports of firefighters that, and we'll cover some of this, firefighters that have to wear soft body armor because they're getting shot at. That never happened years ago.
There's a low rumble discussion about fire trucks having, a sidearm just to keep us safe when we're just doing your basic EMS calls, and we just aren't sure how stable the community is going to be anymore. That's actually a low rumble conversation that's happening, and I just I never could have assumed getting into the field that firefighters would be at the point where they're considering this as an option. It's crazy.
It never should have been an option, and it's kind of shocking that it is. Back in my day, granted it was a long time ago, we walked uphill to school both ways in the snow and all that stuff. But back in my day, you had police and firefighters, and while we may tease each other, we were on the same side, but we had distinctly different jobs. That was the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even at this day, it just seems like there's more and more responsibilities being put on public safety as a whole. So it seems to be more and more common that firefighters are showing up even to incidents with police officers, and we're looking at each other wondering who's really in charge on this scene.
Right,
It seems
yeah.
like, there's just more and more we're being asked to do in our industry for our communities, but less and less of it is our full-time jobs, fighting fires or, cleaning up MBAs or fighting bad guys. It seems to be, doing other things these days just to keep there's just more and more pressure. There's more and more pressure on us than ever before, it seems like. And, I think firefighters and cops are just trying to do everything we can to get through our careers and to keep our industries as happy and healthy as we can. But it's just a weird time to be a public servant, and we're all in it together. That's about as good as we can do right now.
Well, we had a weird joke that you will understand is that firefighters would respond and remain at a distance until we secured the scene because of the inherent threats. And the firefighters are unarmed. We don't want them going into harm's way. It's bad enough fighting a fire. The firefighters are injured at every fire. Cancer's a real issue. Smoke inhalation. I've rescued two people. I went into 2 burning homes to rescue people as a police officer and got smoke inhalation both times. And I'm thinking, this is no joke. They do that every day.
Yeah, and we do. I mean, the gas particulates that come off of our PPEs becoming more of an issue. We're starting to wash our gear more because the more and more plastic we produce in these vehicles and in our houses, the plastics are really, when they burn, those are what's killing us.
Right.
When you burn good old-fashioned wood, yeah, there might be some, but the amount of particulates in these plastics are just insane. I mean, it is getting dangerous, more dangerous to breathe smoke even, but, what are you going to do? This is just the time we're in, and luckily our equipment is getting better. Our SCBAs are getting better. We can breathe better inside our packs, but it really is just the people we serve. We're just trying to keep individuals happy and living productive lives, but it's just getting tough out there.
Yeah, and part of it is the damage it does to those who are trying to protect people, and we'll cover some of that because there's a lot of that to cover. But one of the things that is a growing trend across the United States are public safety offices where you have police and firefighters are cross-trained doing both jobs. Do you see that as an issue where you are, or are you like me, old school, where they should be 2 clearly defined different entities doing different things?
Look, I have a lot to say. At least, I'll make it quick, but I think firefighters are getting too much put on them already. Firefighters used to be the fire experts, and now we're kind of being pushed to be the medical experts, and we're being pushed to be the hazardous materials chemical experts. But we aren't hazardous materials chemical experts. We, firefighters just taking up more and more of these all hazard specialties, but we're being thinned out. We can't do them all as well as we can do 1 or 2 of them at a time. I don't think it's wise to keep putting more and more responsibilities on any given single agency, because I think what you do is you just water down that agency to where they do everything half good,
right,
half okay.
Right.
And
Jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing.
Exactly. I would argue that firefighters are quickly approaching that. If we get 1 or 2 other types of responsibilities put onto us, I think it could very well become that. But, we're hanging in there. We're tough people. Firefighters, cops are obvious. We're just civilians, too, that decided we were going to improve our communities for our careers and for our lives. Like, that's it. Instead of selling computers, we want to serve our communities. And unfortunately, it's getting tougher to do that now more than it has been probably in the last 40 years. And I think the only way we can get through it is by understanding it's not going to get a whole lot better by the time we retire, maybe. But, we got a bunch of young kids who are coming in and need help and guidance and training just like we did. And I think that's the most important thing I can do with my remaining years is, try to improve my community like I always have. But, until people are ready to be communal again in our societies and our communities, I just don't see it getting better for those of us who serve those communities.
And by the way, Josh is a firefighter using big words like communal. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. You can find us on Facebook. Look for and like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. We return, we're going to talk about some trauma that he went through. It had a profound impact on him and others and what he does about it today. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Breakfast with Champions is my morning go-to. Working from home and being an empty nester, sometimes I really need to feel connected to people. I just open the Clubhouse social audio app and I can listen in or participate in the live conversation in the Breakfast with Champions show. It's a great way to connect with people and be inspired. Breakfast with Champions, where everyone has a seat at the table. Download the Clubhouse app today for free and join me in Breakfast with Champions.
Online at www.thebwcinfo.com.
Be sure to follow the Law Enforcement Talk radio show and podcast on the Newsbreak app. Newsbreak is your #1 local news app for current events, free live news for you and your community. Download the Newsbreak app today for free and be sure to follow the Law Enforcement Talk radio show and podcast on the Newsbreak app. Return our conversation with Josh Grandinetti on the Law Enforcement Talk radio show. Josh is a career firefighter, fire captain in the great state of Arizona, and he's also one of the movers and shakers for Foundation Fortified, online at foundationfortified.org. Before we went to break, Josh, we're talking about all the different tasks and responsibilities that our firefighters have, our police have. And one of the things that I had through my entire career in policing that I did not want to do was deliver a baby. That was the one thing, and it came so close. I was like, oh, thank God the firefighters got there. Thank goodness the paramedics got there and took the lady to the hospital. But one of the things, and I want to paraphrase a little bit, is police officers nowadays and firefighters nowadays are expected to be police. They're expected to be constitutional lawyers. They're expected to be lawyers. They're expected to be state lawyers, city lawyers, family, domestic violence counselors, mental health therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, de-escalation technique specialists, you name it. And we're going to pay you, maybe, if you're lucky, $65,000 a year, and you got to have a high school diploma. A lot of agencies don't even require college anymore because they can't fill the ranks. And part of the reason you can't fill the ranks is you're asking too much of these people for the amount you pay them. Like, who can do all that?
Yeah. Well, nobody really. I mean, nobody can. I think institutions, like even look at your local schools, right? I mean, teachers have been saying this for 20, 30 years now. Look, we're being stripped of our ability to teach any individual kid because we're less and less resources, less and less space, right? I think this is just our turn in public safety, is to try to figure it all out. I don't think we're going – I think you're right. The answer is we're not going to be able to do it all. And at some point we're either going to pick ourselves up by our bootstraps and do what we can to improve the situation, because I just don't see it getting much better. I don't see us being able to fill the ranks more. I don't think the people under a specific age in our society really has a concept of 20 years dedicated to one specific task for retirement. I don't think that makes sense to a given population that we deal with these days, right?
They don't do it. Yeah. They don't do the job. They don't see the toll it takes on you and your family.
Right. I mean, I manage a couple firefighters that are all under the age of 25, and some of them really struggle. Like, whoa, wait. I work here how long? And I get paid how much for only a retirement? Like, nah, I'll just do this for a couple of years, and then I'll go do something else. And They do. I mean, they really do. There's
right.
No dedication to anything beyond what they can see today. And I think that's going to be the biggest issue for first responders, really, is how do we replace ourselves? How do we replace ourselves, you know?
Well, people get in the mindset that recruiting drives and recruiting organizations for different fire and police departments are a waste of money. And what I want to say to them, I don't, because, number one, I don't argue with idiots on social media. But you've got, for example, let's take a fire company. You've got the fixed cost of the building. You got the fixed cost of buying the equipment. But then you had the manpower costs, and that never ends. And if a person gets injured, which happens almost every fire scene, they are out and they're still getting paid. They still got benefits. That part never changes, and they got to go up in pay based on inflation. So when we say, if you're not recruiting, you got to fight. You're fighting a losing battle. You're treading water, and you're going to start drowning.
Right. You have to be recruiting always, because even if you're at full staff, you just don't know when that tide's going to turn. Right. I mean, I've lived to see everybody happy and stable, and then at least 10% of our department's gone within a year because a different department opens up with better opportunities or whatever closer to home. You just can't operate when you have that kind of ability to change that quickly. You always have to be recruiting, and it does seem like we're always training new guys now. You know, I feel like I'm constantly running an academy out of my fire station to train new guys, you know.
And when I look back and I see generations of family members like FDNY, for example, or Boston, some of the ones that we think of that have been for we have the great-grandfather was a firefighter, the grandfather's a firefighter, the father's a firefighter, the son's a firefighter or a daughter. And I don't see that happening in a lot of smaller organizations, with the exception of Chicago, Boston, maybe New York and Philadelphia. I don't see that happening elsewhere.
Well, the fire service is a unique place where, you know, nepotism is still very, very popular. You know what I mean? Like, we enjoy hiring our young men, our boys. You know, I don't have any family members in the fire service. I kind of had to make it on my own. And it's definitely tough. It's definitely tough when you got a third, fourth generation firefighter. You know, you just know he's getting the job. And that's, at this point, heck, anybody that'll take it. You know, I remember when I was 19, I was getting frustrated with the sons of firefighters because they were getting some jobs and I had to keep testing. But, you know, you just knew that going in. You knew that, you know, good grades are going to help you out to become a firefighter or cop, right? And so is being tall, and so is being strong, and so is being all these things. You know, it's just advantages that some people have over others. And at this point, anybody who's willing to come and serve 20 years of their life to their community to make it better.
You're hired.
Look, you're hired. I'll take you on. I'll put you under my wing. Just give me the effort. Just give me the effort. You know, it's not an easy job, but that's really all we're looking for at this point is just young, motivated people who want to do something with their lives that's more than just make a bunch of money, you know?
You were young at some time as a firefighter, and I want to draw your attention to back when you were a second-year firefighter, and you had a call for a car fire that was disastrous, wasn't it?
Yeah, you know, I still think about it from time to time. We were dispatched for a car fire. I was a backwards firefighter, you know, so I was in the back. The captain and the engineer who drives the truck, they sit up front, and we were approaching an intersection about 2 miles, maybe a mile away from this car fire when my captain told the engineer, guy driving, he said, turn right, not left, turn right, not left. And my engineer got to the intersection and he turned left. And that left delayed us about 90 seconds arriving on scene. Now, the reason that matters, where it normally wouldn't, is because when we were arriving on scene of this car fire, the person who was driving the vehicle was still trapped shouting for help. Trying everything he could to get uncaught as the flames were starting to look up on his legs. And by the time we got up out of the truck and pulled the hose and discharged it, it was a silent engulfed car. And my engineer really beat himself up for that. You know, he heard left because my captain said, turn right, not left. And, you know, his mind just accidentally, you know, we've all had those moments off duty where you hear somebody say, don't do this, and then you end up doing the thing. And, you know, he really beat himself up for that. And I really looked up to this man, and it was hard. I didn't know how to help him because it was one of those things where it's like maybe that extra minute and a half would have been what we needed. And that was really hard. You know, obviously we hugged him. Obviously we tried to make it easier on him. But how do you help your brother when you know and he knows they failed, even when it was just the simplest, you know, accidental mind goof? It was hard to relate to him for a few weeks after that. We didn't know how to tell him it's not his fault. You know, I mean, what am I lying? It's hard to know what to say in those situations. And even to this day, I'm sure
I still don't know what to say. What I do, Josh, is I'm almost too matter-of-fact about it. We really focus on the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. I'm not God. I wasn't Superman. I just did the best I could. And sometimes there's mistakes made. Make a mistake doing your job. And unfortunately, sometimes that means lives are lost or severely disfigured.
And that's just it. I mean, I don't think anybody was as mad at him as he was himself. You know what I mean? Like, we could have, and again, I wish I could have, you know, have you shake hands with this guy. This guy, you know. Let's
return that conversation. We're going to take a short break. We're talking with Josh Grandinetti, fire captain, career firefighter, also on the movers and shakers for Foundation Fortified, online at foundationfortified.org. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. There's a couple ways you can stay in touch and keep informed of what's going on with the Law Enforcement Talk radio show. Number one, go to our website, letradio.com. Sign up for our email newsletter. It's real easy to find. I promise we don't spam you. I send out about one email every 2 weeks or so. And there's also a feature called Broadcast Channels on our Facebook page, where we send messages directly to your inbox, directly to your messenger. Real easy to sign up for. Make sure you like or follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. And up top, you'll see broadcast channels, one for free podcast versions of the radio show, another one top post of the day. So you too can stay informed quickly, easily, and best of all, like always, free.
First thing in the morning on my phone, I join the Breakfast with Champions morning show in the Clubhouse social audio app. Both are free. I can grab my coffee, no makeup, no hair to do, and connect with people live from all across the world to jumpstart my day. Join us in the Breakfast with Champions rooms in the Clubhouse social audio app.
Online at www.thebwcinfo.com.
Return conversation with Josh Grandinetti on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Josh is a fire captain in Arizona, and he is also one of the movers and shakers for Foundation Fortified, online at foundationfortified.org. That's foundationfortified.org. For winter break, Josh, you're talking about this guy driving a fire truck, and he took a left when he should have been right, and it takes a long time to turn those big beasts around. It really does. And by the time you got there, you were not able to save this guy who basically burned to death. And he struggled with this for a long time. And to be honest with you, it sounds like it still impacts you.
Well, and, it does, not because a man died. I've seen this before, and that's unfortunate. He could have been a mile further away from the station, had the same end, right? It was just one of these situations where it was all bad luck. And, if you could have met this engineer that made the wrong turn, he's just the best of all firefighters. Like, if you were saying 100 firefighters on the line, he'd be the guy you'd say, yeah, that's the best of us. And to watch somebody just make a mistake and then literally tear himself apart over it and not know how to help him not beat himself up was just a very strange environment on the crew for about 2 weeks. And, I don't know if he ever really recovered. I'm sure he still feels that one deep in his soul, but he knows he just made a mistake, and he knows he wouldn't repeat. And then that's just it, right? We all make mistakes in our career, but it's the lack of intention to repeat the mistake.
Right.
A mistake is just a mistake. But if you fully intend to not repeat it, and you fully intend to know the consequence, how can you beat this individual up any further? He's not going to turn in the wrong direction again, But it really was hard on him, and it wasn't easy to be right there, able to pull somebody out, and just not quick enough, not enough time, and too much flame, Well,
the really frustrating part about Josh, I'm getting this secondhand. You were there, and we're having a conversation about it, but I don't know what to say or do. And guys like that, I say guys, that means men and women, because that's a term we use, guys. That refers to everybody in the squad, male, female. It's not a sex thing where I come from, or a gender thing.
Right.
And don't even get me started on sexual identity and sexual preferences. No one cared. We just cared we'd do your job. A guy like that, we turn around and say, dude, we had a saying, and I hated it at the time, and I'm still not real fond of it. We said, in Baltimore, they would say, Baltimore police, and they'd say, lick your wounds later, you're Baltimore police, you got a job to do. And almost that's what you got to say to the guy. Listen, we all have things that we see that we can't unsee, that pop up at the worst times, that we struggle with, but you got a job to do. Do your job.
Right. And and like I was saying earlier, he was the best of us, and he did. He always did his job. He always did his work thereafter. And, I never saw him make another mistake. But it was just really hard to not know how to help him in that situation, because I just felt empty-handed as well.
Yeah, I still do.
How do you assist that cop that accidentally pulled the trigger a second too early? How do you help that individual not feel worse than they're going to feel, because they are a good person? They didn't become a cop or a firefighter to actively hurt individuals, right? We all did what we did because we we have a deep-seated need to improve our situation, you know?
Right.
And so in moments like that, it really feels like I'm just glad that we don't have to repeat these mistakes. I'm glad that this was just an error. But it was hard. It was hard for him, and it was hard for the crew, but we moved on. And, you know, I don't think I'll ever walk away from that situation fully. I'll never come off that incident.
And there's a good chance you're going to encounter something similar to that in your career, and other firefighters as well. And that's, look, I hate to say it, and I'm not saying this in a I told you so kind of way. That's one of the hazards of the job. And they say this all the time. We knew we signed up for. I thought I knew. I really did, Josh, but I didn't know it was going to be as violent and traumatic as it was. And one of the things they didn't teach me in academy, I guess is a question for you, is did they teach you in the fire academy how to deal with this stuff?
No, they didn't. You know, not to beat up on the people who taught us, you know, but just like you were saying earlier, there really is a space for push, listen, recruit. That fire, there's somebody trapped. So that little fear, that little scared you got, you need to push that to the side if you're going to be out here where the big boys are, and you need to get in that fire and do what you know how to do. There's this place for that because it works. It gets young, scared civilians to actually do the hard labor that makes us the, quote, heroes that we seem to be to the community. But it doesn't mean it works for 20 years. It works today. You will push that fear aside today and get the job done today. But what we are left with in 10, 20 years by doing that behavior is our anxiety, is our depression, is our PTSD. You know, we're left with the residue of that pushing it aside, where I'm hoping, like you were saying earlier, Foundation Fortified is a place where you can go to experience that trauma in the privacy of your own mind, you know.
And one of the things is we had the same thing, do your job, and we'll talk about it later. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of later for a lot of us.
Right, there really
until
is
later in life when your life is a disaster and your marriage is falling apart and you're drinking too much, and next thing you know, you die young and all that stuff. We're going to shift your attention to something that happened fairly recently. You all got a call for a house fire, a structure fire, and turns out it was the home of a recently retired fire chief. Am I wrong about that one?
Not wrong, just slightly. So we were dispatched to a very familiar address. This is an address that everyone who wears the emblem of Eloy Fire knows this address, because it is this man worked for Eloy Fire for 40 years. He built the department from the ground, from a volunteer department to a paid, retiring, full-functioning force of a department. And he retired about 7 years before we get dispatched to his house for a not breathing person, and the entire district knew what was about to happen. And the thing that sticks with me is I walked in and saw this lifeless body of once a powerful man. And now I only worked with him for a few years, but then I watched my fire chief and assistant fire chief walk into the home. And to watch these two men who normally have no problem telling me to go over there, get me a roof profile and do these things, and you over there do that, you know, they're just such strong pieces on the chessboard normally, to watch them walk in like 10-year-old boys, because this man was somebody that once did that for them for so long and so well. And you could just see these people diminish as individuals into the scared, confused, mortal beings that they were. And it was just a very odd moment to be a captain and see my entire administrative staff struggle and hug the wife of this man that they've known for a long time, and just unable to change this situation for the better, you know. It's
one of the most undignifying things, and when someone dies, you get the fire department, the police department, all kinds of people there, and it's really one of the most tragic things for me that I remember most is the DOAs that they just died of natural causes. There's nothing shaky going on, nothing nefarious, none of that stuff, but it's like you could have someone, I'm struggling to find the right words. You have someone who lived the best life possible, did great things for the entire planet, and then they're poked and prodded, and they're scooped up, and they're treated like thrown away garbage.
And that's, you know, in a sense, that's very much like what it was. I mean, it was just, here was this individual who had done so much over the course of his life, so much that my family benefits even, second, third hand from his efforts back in the 80s, let alone. And now all those efforts are reduced to just this moment. We're putting a blanket over and we're taking him out of his home and away from his wife. And there was nothing we could do. And it was really, it was hard. It was hard to see everybody so shaken up, because this is how we leave our community members very often. And when we struggle to touch base with that suffering, that sadness, until we really do experience it ourselves. And it was just odd. It was just odd to see such strong, powerful community members that usually I walk in the other room when my chiefs are around, just because they're
We're going to take a short break on that note. We're talking with Josh Grandinetti, fire captain in Arizona, one of the movers and shakers for Foundation Fortified, online at foundationfortified.org. When we return, we're going to talk more about this incident, the impact on him, and what he does about today. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. One of the questions I get all the time is, how can I show my support for law enforcement? We're all busy. We've got busy lives, but there's something oh so simple you can do with our Facebook page. Search for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. And when you see a post you agree with that resonates with you, share it, especially episodes of the podcast. To do all that, just search for us on Facebook, look for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, and be sure to click like. Return our conversation with Josh Grandinetti on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Josh is a fire captain in Arizona, a career firefighter, has been doing this for a very long time. I won't say how long, it's just a long time. He's one of the movers and shakers for Foundation Fortified online. Their website is foundationfortified.org. Before we went to break, Josh, we're talking about the death of this some person that you all knew, that you all respected, had a huge impact on the fire department where you raised, and how you saw your admin staff. And by the way, I'm air quoting say admin staff, because it's a little bit different in firefighting than it is in policing. But that you depend on, and they were basically broken down. They couldn't handle it. And there's a lot to say that. But that's who you rely on, even as a captain, to say, hey, what do I do next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we all have our roles. And myself as a captain, I'm very good at getting a single station with a single group of guys and a single apparatus and affecting change. But our chiefs are trained to a much larger degree, where they can take 20 different fire trucks with 20 different crews and distribute them on scene as necessary, right? Well, my capability is only so much, so I do rely on those chiefs, and it was odd to see them without answers that morning, and empty and broken and all too human. It was a very odd moment for me in my career and in my life. I mean, that's how we're all going to end up, and that's what life reduces down to. What matters is what we do with our time.
Right, and it brings to the forefront of your mind the sense of mortality that we all have, that we're going to have that day. We don't know when it's going to be, and we don't know the circumstances of it, but there's an old saying that I came to this world kicking, screaming, and covering someone else's blood. I'm ready to leave that way as well. The truth is, I'd rather pass away in my sleep where no one knows, and then have guys like you show up.
Yeah, there's a quote of mine that I appreciate. It goes, "Never lament getting older. It's a privilege denied to many."
Absolutely,
and that really is the truth. There's only one other option than getting old.
That's right, and I don't want to entertain that option.
No, I don't want to entertain that one.
The other thing is, and as you're a fire chief or a fire captain, and I'm retired police, and I don't expect any more for people to understand. I don't talk about a lot of things, and I kind of recognize a lot of my guests say we're dinged up. We're okay with that, and we laugh and laugh, but we are dinged up. And there are certain things I went through that, quite honestly, a lot of people have not earned the right to hear about, and I don't explain it to them. Have you reached that point where it's similar with you, where you're like, okay, this comes with the territory, I am who I am, and if you don't like it, that's okay?
I don't know if I've gotten to that point. I mean, I know I definitely have parts of my experience that aren't going to be able to be related to by a lot of individuals. But, I think as first responders, I think it's important for us to be able to share with the community that it isn't always about going to the grocery store and getting your milk. It isn't always about going to, there's a lot of harm that happens around us, and you are lucky to have the services in your life that allow you to blindly go about your day, not knowing that a street away there was a shooting that took the life of a child that I had to go run on. Other communities, other countries, you have to face these things because they don't have the police, fire, dispatch, EMS that we have in this country, and we're lucky to have these services. So stop pretending like you don't need them or want them.
Right. Or how about this one? Stop pretending it's a waste of money because you see them at the grocery store getting their dinner. Well, yeah, we didn't see what happened before that.
But that's why your shows are important. I mean, in your personal life, you might be silent, but you're out there actively. You're a spokesperson for what we go through. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being the entity that you are. It's important. One
of the things that when I was in the academy a long, long time ago, Josh, behind the years,
black and white.
Thought I knew everything. We had a major at the time come in and he said the average life expectancy for a Baltimore police was 52 at the time.
Wow.
And they usually drank themselves to death. And now I think I saw somewhere recently the average life expectancy of an American male is 78, and the average life expectancy of an American male police officer is 68.
Wow, the reduction.
Yeah.
It is insane. It is insane. I wish I had the data for the firefighters, but I do know this fact. Firefighters typically live about 7 years after retirement.
Yeah.
You get about 7 years before cancer gets you or depression or something else. We all work our lives for this retirement that we're all promised. And, it's astonishing how within 5-7 years, many, many, many firefighters end up in the ground,
And I'm not calling you out on this, but I almost feel like it's my obligation to say something to them. We lose touch very easily, very quickly. When I was retired, the day I was gone, life went on without me. I was yesterday's news. I don't think anyone talks about me. I don't know anybody in the department that anymore I've worked with. However, the fact that some people move and they isolate and they drink too much and they die very young, or they have miserable, horrible, lonely lives, and you go, man, why can't I say something? Why can't I do something to make a difference?
Yeah, well, I would just encourage that. The one piece of data you might not ever have is knowing how many people that your program has helped. You know what I mean? I think you are making a difference just by having the show. And I think having guests like myself, I think you are making a difference. And, I wish we could feel it, right? It feels good to be able to give that charitable donation to that single individual who needs it and see it improve their lives. It feels kind of empty to give it to an organization that does God knows what with your $10. So we often, as first responders, don't get that immediate payoff for the things that we do. And I do believe that is part of why we struggle with this suffering, this what's it all for? What's the point? I'm just going to run on some other jerk or some other death or some other bad situation. We don't often get to touch base with the number of thank yous that we actually do receive,
right?
Because we go off to the next call or whatever. I really do believe that most of the time our communities do appreciate us. It's just the loudest ones that are trying to diminish what we do.
And they said the squeaky wheel gets the grease. They seem to get all the attention. Is that part of the reason why you do what you do with Foundation Fortified?
Well, look, I meditate as a personal journey. Okay,
same here. I pray and meditate every day because, man, you don't want to be near me when I don't.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about meditation, and people are worried that they're going to start breaking out chakras and trying to tell you to go to Himalayas.
I'm not that complicated of a guy.
But mindfulness is just a simple trainable skill to allow you to sit down and wrestle with whatever is going on inside your psyche and notice that it's not going to threaten you, really. I mean, these calls we've talked about earlier on the program, they really can get to me in the privacy of my own mind. The screaming of that individual as he went quiet, being engulfed in flames, that's never going to go away. No. But I can close my eyes and notice that memory is only haunting me. It's not here in my person to actually affect my day. It's just behind my eyes, in my mind, and I can notice it, and I can notice it pass away without having to identify with that trauma. And I think that's what the key to mindfulness is. I just don't believe anybody's out there teaching first responders how to do it in a way they can relate to, given the stressful situations we do with our jobs. And that's what Foundation Fortified aims, is just to teach mindfulness to any first responder who wants to give it a try.
And the funny thing is,
That's all it
Josh, when people say mindfulness to me or resilience, I get a little angry.
Yeah, okay, let's hear it, yeah.
Because I don't know what they're saying. I want to revert back to something you said. When people told me a lot of my answer to my problems be meditation, I'm like, yeah, right. I'm sitting in an Indian position with my fingers out. Give me a break. And it turns out what I do is not that, but it makes a huge difference for me.
Right. I mean, there's a place for mindfulness and meditation that's deeply spiritual and humanistic, and there's a place for that. But that's not what we're talking about here at Foundation Fortified. We're just talking about the ability to train yourself to sit down and focus on one thing, be it the breath, be it a sound, be it a sensation in the body, and not lose sight of that single thing that you're trying to keep your awareness on. And then when you do notice that you're distracted by some call or something, some conversation you have to have later, just to notice that you've been distracted and to come back to the area that you wanted to focus on originally.
Right.
It's like a bicep curl for the mind. Right?
What I do
really
is I focus my mind on a dot on the wall sometimes to remind myself what day it is, what time it is, what year it is. And then I need to pay attention to people who are important to me, like my wife and daughters. Josh, can people get a hold of you online? Your website is foundationfortified.org.
Yes, that's kind of my website. It's a little bit of a landing page where YouTube is going to be where all of our content is, all of our meditations that we've put out for first responders, all of our lifestyles. We're big on supporting the supporters of first responders as well. So we got some mindfulness activities on there for children of first responders and for wives and spouses of first responders. We're just here to help. It's all out there for free. It's just content. It's just mindfulness. And if you're struggling and you're tired of the bottle or you're tired of your own coping mechanisms, just give mindfulness a try. Foundation Fortified's out there for you if you ever want to.
Thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate you coming on the show and telling your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate everybody's listening.
A huge thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast version of the Law Enforcement Talk radio show, by the way, which is a nationally syndicated radio show. And we broadcast on over 115 radio stations across the United States to more than 44 million combined population. If you like our show, there's two simple things you can do. Go to our website, letradio.com. Add your favorites. Check it often. You can find episodes of the show right there. And the second one involves our Facebook page. It's so easy to find great content, including past episodes of the show. And when you see something that you like, that resonates with you, be sure to share it with your friends. We'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk radio show and podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.